Welcome back to the YouTube series on monthly meta breakdowns. My name is YuGiOh and you're watching The Forecast. So in today's episode, I'll be honest, it's been a pretty slow month. So this analysis is all based on deck profiles that have come through from the December time period, so December 2019, in order for us to make predictions about what's actually going on in January 2020. And of course, there's quite a lot going on outside of Yu-Gi-Oh! But in terms of what's actually happening within Yu-Gi-Oh!, not a lot has changed over the past month. We'll kick things off with a look at the deck breakdown here. So, still, right in the lead is Orca Sky Striker. It's not going anywhere. It's one of the strongest decks of the format, and until we get a ban list, it's not going to move. Perhaps that might change with the format update. We do have the Master Rule 2020 impact, which could potentially change how things operate. However, unless we get a ban list before that actually takes place, it's likely that Orca Sky Striker is still going to be in the lead because people just haven't found a way to combat against it, or in such a consistent and powerful way. One interesting thing to note from this month is we've had an increase in the amount of Salamangreat players making it into top cuts. Personally, I think this is because in December people tend to get a little bit more casual, so you find that there is quite a lot more rogue stuff here in the top cuts, and certainly coming out and playing at these competitive events. So Salamangreat is one of these decks where it's just very solid in all of the rogue matchups at the moment. All of the hand traps allow you to combat pretty much every rogue strategy that people actually enjoy playing, because Imperm, Veiler, and Ash are really good against those kinds of decks, and pop 2 or negate something against a format where you can expect a lot of people to be playing like one-card interactions. They're just going to lose from that kind of point. Interesting to note, heroes have come up quite a lot, taking an 11% of top cut spots over this month. That's really interesting actually. I think the deck was in pretty much the same state last month. But then moving into this month, we found that just more people are actually building it properly and playing it as, high-level competitors at events. The majority of the time people who play heroes aren't necessarily doing it from a strong competitive standpoint. They're more likely a casual player who just really likes GX or really likes the hero concept, and has decided to roll with that instead. So it's quite interesting to see that it's actually a fairly capable deck. And we've seen a few cases of people reporting that it's got a relatively good Orca Sky Striker matchup, which is not something you see of the other meta decks. The Salamangreat has a pretty bad matchup in that case. Sky Striker also has a pretty bad matchup in that case as well. So heroes coming in and potentially having a real impact here, that's quite interesting, I think. Also, guys, still in there. We've seen some Draco Striker, and then we've got all these rogue decks sort of thrown into the mesh. Interestingly, we've got Infernoid. I've got the deck profile from that on the channel as well. Madolche 2, you can check that out. Evil Eye. This one's quite interesting. So apparently the deck itself wasn't, totally radical. It just happens that if you go up against the right matchups, or if you're playing Evil Eye and you've been practicing with it and you get really good at it, then it doesn't matter what you face against, you're still going to win. So that one's quite interesting for me, definitely. It's one of these sort of slower, stunnier decks, so it's not the kind of thing where you expect it to even breach into top cut necessarily without masses of representation. And Evil Eye certainly doesn't have the representation, so the fact that someone's come on and made it into top cut is pretty impressive, to be honest. Grand Magi in here, Block Dragon BA as well, that one's quite interesting. We've seen it really take off in the US and some other regions as well, which is quite nice. And then Draco Striker, of course, the stronger version of Draco. It's Draco with more draw cards, so what's wrong with that? If we compare this to what we saw last month, you can see Salamangreat up from 12% to 25%. That's a pretty big impact, I think. Orcust, Sky Striker totally got replaced by... Orcust pure version totally got replaced by Orca Sky Striker. Nobody's really playing the pure version anymore, and if they are, they're losing all of their Orca Sky Striker matchups because that deck is just better. Sky Striker's down a bit in representation, but that's no big deal, to be honest. The fact that the Orcust version of the Sky Striker deck fills up those spaces kind of makes sense. There's also quite a lot less Rogue from this month compared to last month, and the reason for that is that we haven't had any YCSs in December. So there's no, top 32 kind of information, it's all just top 8s, which means you have much less diverse representation within Top Cuts, because it's harder for those sort of more random decks to get in. Otherwise, fairly standard. I guess it's interesting to note there's no Pendulum in this month's Top Cuts. No Endymion, none of that stuff. And those are all still very capable decks, just haven't been very popular in the last month for whatever reason. In terms of the Konami impact, so we did have the Chaos Impact Special Edition release. Now, it's a special edition, they don't tend to have a massive impact on the meta, but it did give us Scrap Wyvern, which is pretty important, to be honest. It has a very big impact on how the Orcust Sky Striker or just Orcust Scrap versions can operate. Typically, it's just a few cards added into the Orcust Sky Striker deck, or added into an Orcust deck. There's some interesting things with, like, Urgent Schedule is now a viable way to play your Orcust deck and your Orcust strategy. So definitely something worth checking out. If you haven't already, grab a Scrap Wyvern from the set while you can. I'm sure that at some point it's going to be like the go-to card because it's so important in so many combos. But we'll just have to wait and see on that one, I guess. In terms of other Konami impacts, well, there is one which kind of took over from all of the December meta, and that's the Master Rule update for 2020. So this one's a pretty big deal. Obviously, April 1st, OCG and TCG will be getting this update, and it's really going to impact how we play the entire game. Once again, we'll be able to put Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters in any zones we like, which is awesome. Interestingly now, you'll actually be able to have 6 Fusion monsters on the field at once, which you couldn't do before. I think that one's pretty interesting, actually, to be honest. Otherwise, it's basically just resurgence of all the good previous decks. There's been a lot of hype around DDD. One of my close friends who's been practicing with the deck and testing it has basically just said that it's been power crept out of the game. Even if you can do all of the cool DDD stuff, it's just not as potent as it was at the time. Because, shortly before Zodiac was released, being able to put like 1 or 2 negates onto the board was insane, and the fact that you could do that consistently and have an OTK engine, it was basically unheard of. And then Zodiac came out, putting out like Tridents, Brobbles, and doing the full like Daigusto Emerald, looping through all the instant fusions, whatever. So that was kind of nuts and just totally took DDD out of the picture. Now we have the chance to bring them back into the metagame, and what do we know? They're basically being made redundant. You can get very generic negates onto the board now. Salamangre has an ability to OTK and to put a negate on the board. It's almost as good as DDD in that respect. I'm not going to argue that Salamangre and DDD are similar, they operate very, very differently, but they both have the ability to do both of those key factors, which is kind of what drove people to play DDD in the first place, alongside the fact that you got to play all the cool summons and stuff. So I think it's one of these things where it's had a lot of hype. Initial hype was probably a little bit too much. People are starting to realise that other decks can do the same thing. Even Fluffles, you can put negates onto the board, which seems fine. And you can OTK, which is nice. But yeah, Master Rule 2020, that's the biggest update that we've had from Konami from this month. So that is the thing that's going to be impacting us the most in the coming future, but that's obviously not having any impact in January. On to the deck breakdown then. So I think this one's kind of interesting, but there aren't tons of events that actually happened in December anyway. So Orcust Sky Striker starts off very, very strong and then gradually goes downhill. And it's basically because the later into the month you go, the more that people are like going home from university and stuff, which is largely where the YuGiOh communities are built up. Or, people are just like, oh, it's the holidays, I'll play something fun, or oh, it's coming to the end of the year and I haven't played this deck in however long. So you get a lot more rogue as you go on towards the end of the December month, which is why you see the Orcust Sky Striker line go down a bit. Salamangre, so I think I mentioned this a little while ago, we saw it gradually climbing and climbing. I think it's reached about the peak that it's going to be at. We see a consistent about 25% throughout the whole of the month in terms of top cut representation. which is understandable. It's a very good deck, it's very consistent, and the ban list is likely to make it slightly better, to be honest, if there is one that's going to impact the Orca Skystrike and take that down a notch. However, you know, it does have that slightly awkward matchup there. There's not much else to note. I guess Skystrike has had a bit of an iffy time this month. It doesn't have the best Orca Striker matchup or Salamangreat matchup, so if those two are competing with it, then it's going to really struggle. We've got the Draco Striker in there, we've got the Madolche in there. Not a lot to say, to be honest, on the deck breakdown over the month. In terms of the top decks that have been coming in, well, most of them have been the same as the previous 2 months, so if you're interested in what those are, then check out those videos. But there were a few things that stood out, just not massively, like, super important in every deck ones anymore. So Urgent Schedule, mentioned this a little bit earlier, it does allow you to turn your Orcus deck into like a massive OTK deck if you want it to be. 2 free monsters basically, right? It gives you 2 machines, which is Orcus combo, because one of them gets to be a scrap recycler. So that's kind of nuts there. And we saw it come up quite a lot in some of the American regionals actually. Block Dragon, being very important. Block Dragon BA, massively picking up popularity. I really like the concept. Just spam out so many monsters and you get so much access to just like everything. Link with this guy, you can rank 8 with this guy. There's some crazy stuff you can do with Block Dragon, so if you haven't tried out the deck, check out Kian's list, give it a go, and let me know how it goes for you. And then the final tech I want to talk about, obviously, Engage. It's in every good deck at the moment. You've got Draco Striker, Normal Striker, Orca Striker, you've even got people playing Salad Striker at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see whether Engage does actually continue to persist in the meta, or whether it gets knocked out by a ban list or something else like that. But definitely something to keep in mind. If you can fit Engage and a Skystriker engine into your deck, there's absolutely no reason not to at the moment. It just makes any existing deck so much more powerful. So some example decks from over the month. We've got Ben Sherman's second place WCQ, Orcus Skystriker. You can see the hand traps. We've got the DD Crows in here, the Phantasmes, and the Ash Blossoms. And Imperms, so all, you know, some of the most impactful. I wouldn't say Phantasme has been super impactful at the moment, but if Salamangreat is on the rise, then potentially Phantasme is a little bit better in those matchups as well. Anything to note from the side deck? I guess Nibiru's been very important at the moment. But that's pretty much it for that one. James Woodward, third place at a regional here in the UK. This is a pure striker list, but it is a going second list. We can see Mind Controls in here. The Into the Voids have been very popular in the last couple of months as well. Just interesting to see the Sky Striker doing reasonably, given that it struggled a little bit this month. Stephen Roberts, second place, regional list. So Salamangreat, a good example here. So we've got Skullmeisters becoming much more important with so much graveyard interaction in all of the meta decks, but also a lot of the rogue decks. Nibiru in here too, got to combat those rogue spam monster boards. And interestingly, in the side deck, he decides to play this on Strike, which I think is a really good choice at the moment, especially in a rogue format. If you can hit the correct monster that they're summoning out from the extra deck, then you pretty much just win the matchup there. Last one to look at is Kian's Block Dragon list. So this is the smaller version of it. If you want to check out the full profile with his commentary, then go ahead and check that out, or you can see it on his own YouTube channel, Master Diamond. Otherwise, yeah, it's an OTK list. A cool thing from the side deck is the feature of Chaos Hunter, of course, that one's quite nice too. So, popular trades from this month. This is monitoring of the card market trends. So every week they do an update of what's been popular, and this was shortly after the Master Rule 2020. So over December, people have just been spamming all the trades related to the Master Rule update. We've got the Draglubion, suddenly is now a viable card. You have to combat those meta boards and those non-meta boards with the Dark Rule no more, and Dimensional Barrier is going to be massively important, because people will just be able to summon anything they want. Keep in mind, it's not going to be able to stop your opponent from making those Link summons, but chances are they're going to be playing a lot more summons than just Link in the future. Junk Speed is a very interesting one as well for the Synchro decks. That was going to be quite interesting to see in the future. In terms of what's upcoming for January, there are 2 major releases here. So the first one is the Magical Hero the Legendary Duelist pack. This one's quite interesting. We don't know an awful lot about what's involved in it, but there's one card which is pretty important, and that is Magician's Soul, which is going to be really impactful for the Spiral decks. It allows you to send your key pieces to the graveyard for free and then draw some cards. So I'm hoping that Spiral will come up as an important deck in January, but we'll just have to see on that one. And then the other one is the Ignition Assault release. So that's right at the end of the month on the 30th, so it's a little bit little wait for us actually for that one. But I think it's going to be quite interesting. We've got the At Ignista deck in there and the Senka deck. There's not really anything that looks like it's going to be meta defining based on what the OCG showed us, but you never know with the imports and with the updates of like the Time Thieves and stuff. We might see some pretty interesting stuff coming out of this set as well. But that is right at the end of the month, so we're not going to see an impact until February anyway. In terms of UK player performance, so nobody really stood out as topping the most regionals this time around, but we did see quite a lot of people who got 2 tops from this month. So congratulations to all of you guys, and looking forward to what you can do in the future. So that is it from this episode of the Forecast. As always, the channel does really need your help in order to produce these videos. I need to pick up important information like what regionals were on, who was playing, what sort of score they got, what date it was, that kind of stuff. Because that's what leads to me being able to share this information with you, and if we have more information, we have a better linked community. So if you've got access to any regional level information, please do share it with me. You can contact me via the Facebook page, there's a link in the description, or just go into the comment section and type up, oh, this got first place at X Regional 2021, whatever, and then I'll be able to include it. Otherwise, nothing else from me to say. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.